Happy Thanksgiving. How was your Thanksgiving Thursday? Involved a
It
TV
was,
studio.
yeah, it was great. Obviously, got to watch the games, got to talk about the games. That's fun. And then got Thanksgiving dinner, which is cool. I usually go to my friend's house who's an American. He's lived here for 20 years. So the fact that I was doing the games and got to still eat was great. I mean, this is what it's all about. I had a lot of memories thinking back when I was a kid too, just how much I enjoyed that day. And it was always around football and food.
Yeah, I heard you say that yesterday, and I was going to ask you sort of whether it's football, whether it's the table. What are your kind of abiding Thanksgiving memories like as far as kind of getting involved in the game are concerned?
I vividly remember meeting all my friends and going to the park to play football. And even the people that didn't play all the time would be out there because you played football before the games came on. So we used to go out in the morning, play a game, come in, watch football, and then eat. And every year that happened, and it was so fun. And that's probably when and how I fell in love with football. I always was a fan, but it was just those kind of memories that just connected me to the sport in a unique way.
In terms of a player, what were the challenges of playing on Thanksgiving? Like I don't know, I haven't done my research in full, but what was it like?
The challenges were you usually had family in town. So
Yeah.
just kind of imagine that. Usually you didn't have that many people around while you're trying to get ready for a game. So you might have a house full of people. So that's always unique. But it's just a different day. I mean, you knew the intensity was at a higher level because you knew everybody was watching. And that does something to you as a player, as a fan, as an organization. You just know that's the only show in town and it's fun. So it just made it you felt like a playoff atmosphere. I played on Christmas. I mean, I played on Thanksgiving in the NFL before I played in the playoffs. And there was a similarity to that, to how you just felt like the focus was on you. And it was always a great experience.
Do you think that played a part yesterday? Because I think we probably all expected the Lions to maybe run away with the game against the Bears, even more so when they got out to a hot start. Maybe the Giants Cowboys didn't, on face value, look like there was going to be much riding on it. But as is always the case, maybe Thursday nights and that short week, they just seemed a little bit more in there. And in the end, it was the Packers running away from the Dolphins, which was perhaps the kind of biggest surprise of the day.
Yeah, it's always going to be competitive because of that. No matter what's happening, your ups or downs, people are playing for pride. And even if you're on a bad team, you're playing to show and showcase your skills. And think about it. That's where you do it. Everybody's watching. Some other team could be looking and say, hey, I remember that Jason Bell. I saw him play on Thanksgiving. We want him on our roster. So things like that really matter. It's a short week. So sometimes the plays are condensed. It's not as many in there, so teams are kind of used to what you're doing. You kind of know you're not getting caught off guard because you've seen it all, but it's about players making plays, and that usually happens at some point in the game. So that's what always makes it fun and competitive. But usually the good teams find a way to pull it out.
And that leads me on to my first point, which was about the Lions. And Dan Campbell's videos are always great value after a game. And I thought it was really noticeable to hear him say, like, sometimes you can kind of start to value wins in different ways. Some are more important than others. But ultimately, when you're winning games, it's the wins that count. And is it almost that's now important for the Lions because they're pretty much there in terms of a playoff place?
Winning is hard. You work so diligently through the off season, training camp, and all that to get to this point and get some wins under your belt. I mean, you know how hard it is. So yes, you need to celebrate them all. I think with them, they expect so much of themselves that they're looking at the landscape and thinking, man, are we getting injured in this game? Like every time I see somebody go down for them, I feel like this cloud of pressure. They're winning, they're executing, but it's like, oh no, another one, somebody else. So I think what he's going to have to combat, and he's doing a good job as a former player and a really good head coach, is understanding the mental fatigue of that. Hey, fellas, we gotta get through this. I know these things are happening. This adversity is going to take place, but we keep winning. We keep stacking wins. And you have to learn from each of those wins because that's something that might happen to you in the playoffs where you can draw on that experience. And so he has to continue to remind his players that each win we have to take, we have to love, and we have to learn something from that.
How good has their next man up mentality been? I know it's a bit of a a trope in sort of American sport because the rosters are big and it's kind of in you come. But we've seen DJ Reader, we've seen Zadarius Smith at really short notice. Aiden Hutchinson's been injured, Alex Anzalone's got injured, but there doesn't seem to be a drop off. What does that say to the culture created?
So think about it. A lot of those are on defense. Aaron Glenn, their defensive coordinator, my former teammate, great player. What it shows me is coaching because your depth is ready to play. It's a good roster. You know you're going to have to lean on everybody. So how did you put that team together, understanding that it's working out? And how have you prepared everybody when they have to step in that role? There's a lot of coaches that don't really pay attention to the players that might not have to play. Now, they're not the best coaches. The best coaches coach everybody. You hear Bill Belichick talk about that. And that's what I'm seeing in Detroit, because the next man up is ready to perform because they are prepared, because they are counted on and they're accountable. When you get ready through the week, you have to be ready to get in there and play like you're the starter. And it feels like that team is developed like that, because when the next person gets in, you don't see a lot of mental mistakes. You might see some physical matchup differences, but everybody seems to be able to execute the defense as they need to.
On the subject of execution, the end of the game took a lot of headlines. Matt Eberflus took a lot of heat. I also saw in some quarters Caleb Williams get a little bit of heat for
Yeah.
one kind of the snap. Where do you come down in a situation like that, Jason? Not necessarily about blame, but how does a team deal with something as obvious as that?
Situational football is always on the head coach. It's his job. He has to understand what is the situation, whatever it is. He is the head coach. He is the CEO. You have people working different departments, but you are the one ultimately overseeing it all. You can't get caught up in one thing or another because you missed that. In that situation, yes, Caleb Williams, there might have been communication issues. He's at the line of scrimmage trying to check. Whatever all that is. At that point, yeah, it might be a long field goal. You got to take the timeout. You see the clock go down and you go, at some point you go, I don't have 2 plays. Timeout. You see people all the time, good coaches. All of a sudden, you see the ball about to snap, and then a flag goes up. You're like, what happened? The coach just ran down the sideline and called a timeout. We see it all the time because they don't like a look. That is his job. And the worst thing that happened is when they pan the camera to him and his facial expression. He looked like a person without answers. And regardless if he had it or not, it's what it looked like. And in that point, and that time, you go, well, if you don't know, how does everybody else know? And that's the problem. The buck stops at him whenever it comes down to situational awareness and execution.
Weird stuff happens in divisional games. We know that. We're also getting to the time of year where kind of games almost count double, where wins are important. Bengals are playing the Steelers this weekend. Lions play the Packers on Thursday. It feels like there's a lot of these games that now start to have a little bit more on them. Do we feel like we're getting almost a playoff season early in some of these instances, whether it's for a seed-in or for a playoff place, whatever it might be?
Oh, without a doubt. And that's the mentality. That's what's being talked about. And first of all, divisional games are fun and competitive because everybody's familiar with each other. If I'm covering you and you're a wide receiver and I've covered you 2 times a year for the past 3 years or whatever, like I know what you're going to do. With the core players, you got a really good sense of who and what they are. So it really is about executing at a high level. Going out there, you try to put your wrinkles in your plays that might help you. But ultimately, it's like, I know what you're going to do. You know what I'm going to do. Who's going to win today? That's always fun. And when things are on the line, obviously, if the intensity steps up, the best way to get to the playoffs is to win your division. So all these games are important, and of course with the seedings. So yes, these are things being discussed. All the coaches say every game is the same. We're trying to win. But during the week, the way they talk about it, when something else is at a higher level and it has a higher sense of urgency. And that's what divisional games bring. That's why having them late in the year like this, to your point, is so fun and exciting.
One game that isn't a divisional one is what looks to be a really good game on Sunday with the Ravens and the Eagles. We often talk about quarterback matchups, but here we've got 2 running backs who are absolutely crucial to the way their teams play. Floor is yours, Jason. Talk to me about Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley.
I mean, this is absolutely the way the NFL is headed. What I love about this is not only how they're performing, showing that I don't care what your position says. If you're an X factor player, you should be treated differently and looked at differently. I don't care what the analytics says. Both of these people are X factor players. Now, the game we've seen is all about throwing the ball and all that kind of stuff. Defenses have adjusted. Guess what teams are having success? The teams that have went back to the norm and run the football can take over the game running the ball. And these two players do that. The reason these two teams are having the success they are is they literally can wear you down in the beginning with the run game and close out the game with the run game. And both their runners can crack explosive plays down the field. So if you want to take away the pass, like most teams are doing, and it's a numbers game, we got a guy that can take advantage of that. And these two players can. If you're going to have success, when you look at 49ers, what they did last year, it was Christian McCaffrey and what he was able to do and accomplish. When you look at the Super Bowl champions, Isaiah Pacheco and his explosive run ability, the running back position matters. And if you don't have one, you are at a disadvantage as an offense. And these guys are showing that. They get stronger as the game progresses. That's what I love about them. They're not a flash in the pan kind of runner. I mean, as the game goes on, it seems like they get faster. And that says a lot about their conditioning, their mental makeup, everything. And the team rallies behind that. When your running back is making explosive plays, running guys over, breaking tackles, jumping over people backwards, you know what that does? That ignites your sideline. Because ever since we were kids, guess who the best person really was on the field? The running back. Because when you're young, the quarterbacks aren't that polished. It's the running back. And so when you got one of those players, it does something different. And they are having success because of that. I'm telling you, the Dallas Cowboys wish they would have had Derrick Henry. It would be a completely different team early on in the season. But now, with him teamed up with Lamar Jackson, you're looking at the Baltimore Ravens thinking this team could be in the Super Bowl and win it. And it's all because of that. So when you look at the running back position and what it's done to teams this year, fantastic.
It feels like we're getting a lot of chat about the running backs being in the MVP conversation, which to my mind is a little bit overdue. And not just for running backs, but for players in general. It's always been a quarterback vote, or certainly over the last 10 years or so. Do you think that's unfair?
Yeah, it's totally unfair. But it's because of the priority put on the position of the quarterback. And all you got to look at is when they, gambling and casinos, they rate obviously positions by value. Quarterback's always up there. If the quarterback's out, you look at your team and you think, man, they don't have a chance unless you have a Superman X factor at the position. It's like when Adrian Peterson won. I mean, he was obviously for that team so dominant in what he did. I do think it needs to be looked at differently, and the voters need to do that because when you think about it, who on their team, if you remove them, they wouldn't be the same. And when you look at what Saquon's doing, I mean, that he allows them to do everything else. I know Jalen Hurts is, has to throw the ball, but it starts with that running game. So, yeah, I do think I wish that wide receiver, I wish running backs, it was more of a running back quarterback thing. I know wide receivers are a little different at times, but you can have your outliers there, but definitely running back and quarterbacks. And I think that would just bring more value to the position as a whole if they got that kind of notoriety.
Final question, we'll bring it back to Monday Night Football, which on the face of it, Broncos-Browns kind of might not look like the most exciting game in the world, but the Broncos have really built an identity, probably on defense, but it's allowed Bo Nix to grow into the season. And we've seen Jaden Daniels explode and slow down. Caleb Williams has had his issues. Drake May was late into the team. It feels like with Bo Nix, he's just been allowed to kind of grow naturally, and that's been to his benefit.
Yeah, when this pick happened, you think about Sean Payton. And everybody was like, as a play caller, as a play designer, as a coach, if this is his pick, he's going to make it happen for Bo Nix. This is great for Bo Nix, a great situation. And you're seeing that play out. It's very important for the play caller and the playmaker to be aligned. And in this, if you are looking at Sean Payton, whatever he tells you, you're going to do. It's work. And he's telling you, I'm going to make you a different type of Drew Brees. I just trust me. follow my lead and it's going to work. And you've seen that happen every single week. He's grown. Bo Nix as a quarterback. He has great command as a young
Yeah.
player in this offense. And you just see that growth, and that's what you want. It's a very special and unique relationship. And keeping them two together for a long time, they should have a lot of success. I mean, if you're a Denver Broncos fan, you should be very happy and excited for the future.
They look like they're good value for a playoff place at the moment. Does that surprise you a little bit, Jason? As maybe the way they've kind of moved into contention come maybe a bit ahead of schedule?
It has. I thought they'd have success, but I didn't think it would be like this. I mean, what they're able to do on defense, my goodness, they have a great coaching staff, first of all, with a lot of experience, but they've really pulled this together. And I think it tells you something about there might be parity with players, but there isn't with coaches. I always say that there's not parity in the NFL with coaches or front office management. And what you're seeing in Denver is this coaching staff who has a lot of experience that has found a way to get the best players on the field, put them in great positions, and they are growing from week to week.